you don't have a recruitment problem, you don't have a talent problem, you have a story problem.
And it also kind of de-risks your business a little bit. I mean, we talk a lot now about Ireland, being exposed to kind of the geopolitical stuff that's happening in the US. And I think, kind of geographical diversification is a good way to kind of de-risk the business as well.
I know the word culture is such a cliche and everybody hates it.
Yeah, but it's just the way we do things around here.
Yeah, the way we do things around here.
Yeah.
I asked ChatGPT all about you, and they told me that you're a seasoned recruitment entrepreneur with over 2 decades of international experience in the talent acquisition industry.
That makes me sound old,
Award-winning technology-led recruitment service provider headquartered in Dublin, Ireland. You have offices in...
We have offices in Ireland, we have offices in Australia, India, Middle East, and we've just set up in the US as well.
So you're an international service providing practice.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a real success story of an Irish business.
Yeah.
And it says you're technology-led. You're innovative and technology-led. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, so we're not quite Rent AI Recruiter, but that's the way we're going. I mean, our view is, and I think this is the view of most people now, that it's not necessarily AI that we're competing with. It's companies who can use AI better, basically, and who can implement AI within their business more effectively and more efficiently. And that's what we're thinking about and implementing and talking about every day in our business, is how can we use AI to make ourselves better, more efficient and more effective service providers for our clients, basically.
What I always use AI for is to take out the very basic stuff so that I can get paid to do, for brainware.
Yes, 100%.
So that I don't have to spend my clients' resources doing kind of basic stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I'm going to give my accountant a shout out now. It's like my accountants. My accountants think I want to buy accounting from them.
Sure.
But I don't. I have a package that does that.
Yeah.
I have AI that does that. What I want to buy is their knowledge of the tax environment, the legislation, the policy.
Yeah.
I want to buy that. I want them to come to me and say, Tiff, because you do this, this and this, you should be doing this, this and this, for more efficient. That's what people want from us now.
Yeah, so we don't want our recruiters, in the same way, we don't want our recruiters spending time sending out, the same LinkedIn message to 100 people in a day. I mean, we don't need to pay humans to do that anymore. It needs to be done properly, it needs to be done in the right way with the right messaging, it needs to be highly personalized, but at the same time, we don't need humans to do that anymore if you've got the right technology behind you. And that can dramatically improve your efficiency as a recruitment business, for example. So I think automation is a big part of what we're doing at the moment. We're looking at what repetitive tasks within our workflow can we automate and how can we do that? And we're doing that to a large extent today.
I suppose in Ireland, I'm thinking of myself and architecture, engineering, construction, property firms.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's a small pool. We all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
We all kind of do. And so there wouldn't be huge numbers. So in order for you to really optimize those efficiencies that you're talking about, you need to be in bigger pools, don't you? Which is why you're an international service provider.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really what we're talking about, once you move past 30 people in your business in Ireland, you're kind of a big, you're in the 95th percentile in terms of size of recruitment company in Ireland. So scale is kind of hard to achieve as a recruitment business in Ireland, and I believe you need to look at other geographies really if you want to grow your business from a recruitment perspective. And it also kind of de-risks your business a little bit. I mean, we talk a lot now about Ireland being exposed to kind of the geopolitical stuff that's happening in the US, and I think kind of geographical diversification is a good way to kind of de-risk the business as well.
Yeah, and also I suppose Ireland is a good kind of springboard because we are so reliant on FDI.
Yes.
And we have a lot of my clients would have clients that are FDI clients.
Yeah.
And they're leveraging their relationships with them in Ireland.
Yeah.
To actually sally forth into these other geographies and grow their businesses that way. And that's the kind of the playbook of the Jones Engineerings and the Shure Engineerings, the mechanical and electrical firms that are now operating up in Sweden and Germany. And
huge success stories. Yeah,
huge success stories. But they've leveraged their relationships with the foreign direct investment firms to break into other geographies. Mm-hmm. Have you done that?
100%, yeah. Well, that's certainly the current plan. And I mean, we're working with IDA companies coming into Ireland. You know, we've got some really good kind of case studies in that regard. You know, kind of filling, you know, kind of key kind of site lead roles, or kind of managing the initial hiring that they're doing in Ireland on site. But certainly, I think what's interesting for us is looking at Irish companies. Those are similar Irish companies, not necessarily in construction, but looking, you know, technology companies, Irish technology companies or telecoms companies that have set up and are expanding overseas. And I think that's kind of that's a model, you know, maybe, you know, using the green jersey to some extent to kind of help, you know, because you've already got those relationships to some extent, and kind of leveraging that. Exactly. And I think when you look at industry, I mean, it goes to show how kind of, you know, there's senior Irish people throughout lots of kind of key sectors, and whether that's telecoms, it could be you know, technology. And I think kind of using those relationships is a great kind of entry point for us for new markets.
So look, me and you met, right, at the Construction Summit, and when we chatted a bit more in depth...
You're interviewing the famous Dermot Bannon.
Yeah, I know. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
He was brilliant. Like, easy to interview him. I could have interviewed him for 2 hours, actually, to be honest.
My wife was the most excited about that, you know, when she heard that I was going to be introducing Dermot Bannon, you know, so
it was brilliant.
I didn't realise what a big celebrity he actually is, you know.
But he's a household name in Ireland.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
He's literally a household name.
What a great personal brand he's built for himself as well.
Well, that was what our whole talk was about. Because I thought we were going to talk about like interiors, and then I thought about it a bit more, and I was like, no, this man's a genius.
Yeah.
But you know, when you drill down into it, he's kind of an instinctive genius. Kind of every step of the way. He didn't really have a playbook, and he that self-confessed.
Yeah.
He's kind of instinctive entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Instinctive marketer.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
Sure. Yeah, that's his USP, right?
Well, exactly. And like every household in Ireland knows that name. Even my daughter, who's 18 and, you know, doesn't watch TV really. Yeah. You know, she streams things on the internet, has heard of Dermot Bannon.
Yeah.
You know? But he was great.
He was very good. I really liked what he said, and it's one of my notes for today is that idea of when we talk about branding. I know we're going to come on to it, but you know, his idea about being authentic, you know, and I think that comes through a lot. And you know, we had a webinar last week in employer branding where we had over 100 HR managers registered, and that was one of the key things coming through there as well, is that you're trying to stand out, but you also have to be authentic. So yeah, it'd be great to get your 2 cents on that as well. Interesting,
because it's interesting you say that, because you know, I work with people who are senior leaders in the architecture, engineering, construction, property. I always am tempted to say AEC, but people have told me that they may not know what AEC is, so I always have to spell it out. Yeah. But they come to me a lot of the times and they say, and they don't even realise that I can help them with this, but they say, you know, the labour market is so hot. We're putting jobs on Indeed and jobs.ie, and we're sponsoring posts on LinkedIn, but we're not getting the candidates that we want. We're not getting the calibre of candidates that we want.
Sure.
And I always say to them, like, you've defaulted straight to giving your money to a huge global conglomerate, but you haven't looked inside. Like you don't have a recruitment problem. You don't have a talent problem. You have a story problem.
Yeah.
You know, so it's about, like, if the story is not, if you haven't got your story straight inside the building, it's definitely not going to land outside the building.
Yeah, of course.
So no matter how many euros you throw at recruitment or an agency or various different websites, people aren't going to be attracted to your employer brand.
Yeah.
And that authenticity piece is key, isn't it?
Because it comes through.
Of course,
and people will see through it if you're not living it, and it's just for want of, you know, it's just a poster on a wall or
taglines and logos. Yeah. And it's what is the lived experience of actually working in your company? Yeah. And how do you convey that to potential hires, or even to the existing people that are already on your staff, that are valued, that have already been onboarded, 100%. That you've invested a huge amount of money in training them and immersing them in your culture and in your corporation, in your objectives. You don't want to let them go, because you're literally letting money go down the drain. So how do you keep them? Yeah. And again, that goes back to the inward, authentic, your culture. What does... I know the word culture is such a cliche and everybody hates it.
Yeah, but it's just the way we do things around here.
Yeah, the way we do things around here.
Yeah, keep it simple, yeah.
But that's the thing. When like I work with MDs and CEOs who come to me with a problem, right? I think you do the exact same thing, and I think that's what happened. That's why we kind of realized there was an intersection there.
I think so. Yeah.
Because you integrate, you have teams that integrate with senior leadership.
Absolutely.
Teams.
So
Tell me a little bit about that.
So we basically embed our recruiters and we brand our recruiters in our client's business. Okay. So we believe that, you know, the current model of delivering recruitment services is broken in terms of, you know, companies having no commitment with the agencies that they're dealing with. It's on a success only basis. There's CVs being fired in, you know, there's no kind of real proper service delivery at all, you know, in that kind of traditional method. So our model is based around kind of a true partnership approach where we embed our recruiters in the business. It's not just about like one of the key benefits of that is that we get a real understanding of the culture, we get an understanding of the way they work and the type of profiles that they're looking for and the fit that they need with the candidates for the jobs.
Okay, so I worked in a contractor, right?
Yeah.
As you know,
Mac,
for 7 years. Yeah, so
great brand.
Yeah,
we
built
looks
a brand.
great. Yeah, it did though. Yeah, it really stood out. You know,
Yeah,
in
it
the
was.
market.
It was.
Yeah.
Now look, like it was always a standout brand. You know? But I think when you apply that bit of strategy to it, then you can really amplify the message into the target audiences want. And I did that, and I learned a lot while I was doing it. I worked in Mac, and when the project managers or project directors won a nice big job, like say they would do their absolute best to plan to resource plan and plan the org chart as much as they possibly could at tender stage, because they had to be able to prove to the client we can resource this job, right? But you know, when we actually won it and got it over the line, we've won a 30 million euro job to build a building, or you know, a 15 million euro job to do a fit out, whatever it is. They would have to, inevitably, they'd probably have to hire a few more resources at short notice, at very, very short notice. And they would default to picking up the phone to the guy in the agency that they know.
Yeah.
Okay? So, like, what makes you different from that? How do you provide an alternative to that? Because I wanted to obviously invest in the employer brand. I wanted to invest in I suppose building a warm pool of talent that was kind of listening and ready for the call. Yeah. I wanted to do that, and I was doing it, but the lads liked to be able to pick up the phone to the guy in the agency. And you know, we used to, and I'm not knocking agencies, they provide a service. No. But how are you different?
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about there is personal relationships, right? And I think no matter what service you're providing, we're never going to lose personal relationships, and that's probably the one thing that ChatGPT isn't going to be doing for us in 10 years time. And so I think that's probably what you're talking about. But you know, in terms of our service provision, you know, and we've done a lot of work in terms of our sweet spot customer, which I know is an area that you're very focused on as well. And it's very important that, you know, you're selling to the right type of customer and the customer that's going to be successful with you. And I think our service is quite innovative. So our service fits best with kind of innovative, you know, maybe that's engineering companies or technology companies, or, you know, in that space, very much so. And that's where it works well. I think maybe construction isn't the best example of that type of industry. Now, you know, it's hard you don't want to paint, we talked about cliches earlier, but you don't necessarily paint all companies with the same brush. But at the same time, we have to be strategic in terms of how we select our clients. And I think, you know, construction probably wouldn't necessarily be the most kind of innovative.
You're allowed to say it. Yeah. I was a director in a construction company. Yeah. Most of the people that were on the board that sat around that table were people with a construction background or a construction degree. Yeah. They were not people with business degrees.
Yeah, so they might be slow to adopt a new process, or maybe be suspicious and maybe tend to lean back on, oh look, the way we've done it before. Where other companies, and you know what we're seeing as well in the US, other countries and other cultures are much quicker to adopt new services, and they're much quicker to, you know, close deals, and you know, the sales cycle is much faster. You know, so I think that's something that we've learned. So
we like to do things the way we've always done it.
We like to do things we've always done it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Except for when you get the bill, when you look at the profit and loss account at the end of the year and you realise how much money you've spent on recruitment.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And we've had obviously, we've had clients whereby, in the construction sector where, it's just, they adopt our service. And then at the same time, I won't name names, Tiffany, but at the same time, so we're kind of an exclusive recruiter working with them, embedded partnership arrangement, and ideally we're supposed to be dealing with the hiring managers, etc., and fully embedded in their systems. But at the same time, they're dealing with traditional agencies at the same time as using us, and we're reaching out to the same candidate pool that the traditional agencies are reaching out to, and it's because they just couldn't. The organization was so kind of disorganized, and they couldn't almost stop.
They couldn't change the default.
They couldn't change. They were just unable to change. And in that system,
that's a communication. That's an internal communication thing as well.
I think it's important for a business to be able to say, like, we're not for everybody, and we're not going to work with everybody. And it's just to be smart about it, so that we, instead of getting ourselves into that situation, we work with customers where we're much more likely to be successful. And I think, and I'm sure this is something that you'll kind of appreciate, is that, that piece of work that we did around our top 10 customers, our top 10 best customers, but also our top 10 worst customers, was really valuable and really instructive in terms of where we're going to put our efforts in future, and
kind of the 80-20 rule type thing.
Yeah.
And I think as well, one of the things I do with a lot of my clients is I look at the profitable clients and the profitable jobs with them. And I go, what are the types of jobs that you're making most profit on? And let's go get more of those.
Exactly.
And it's actually surprising to me how many people in our industry, or how many firms in our industry, don't have access to that data, aren't collecting it, and aren't analysing it like a hawk. Watching it like a hawk every month.
I know, and it's not even that. It's not like even simpler than that. I think is keep doing the things that are that are going well, and stop doing the things that aren't going well. And I think if that simple kind of those simple decisions will really make a world of difference.
So I love what you were saying about attracting. So I think there's obviously, for me as a marketing person, it's kind of employer brand and customer brand. I always try and get my clients to invest in both.
Yes, yeah.
Employer brand and customer brand. And very often a lot of the content that you'll be making will kind of straddle both. It'll feed into both narratives. Like if you're making a video about a very cool project where you innovated and you produced something that was different as a solution to a big challenge, that's going to appeal to potential customers as well as potential hires, because the potential hires are going to be looking at it going, I'd love to work on a project like that.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to get an opportunity to flex my muscles and do something a bit different. And these guys look like they're open 100%. To that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I love what you were saying earlier about kind of attracting the right customer. Because it's the same as attracting the right talent.
The right talent, absolutely. Yeah. So like in terms of, like the bottom line is that like employees want to work for great brands. And I think the business case for a strong employer brand is so strong, and it's very simply that it'll reduce your cost per hire. And I think often that gets lost. That
well, I think we should just put that in big, huge quotes on the video.
It just reduces your cost per hire.
Say it again, Barry.
It reduces your cost per hire. So there you go. No, look, I mean, I think... and
again, is that data that everybody's collecting? I think a lot of people probably aren't collecting data on cost per hire. And cost per losing a person as well. Like if you lose an important member of staff, then you've got to spend the money to hire the new one. So pay the agency, or pay Barry, or pay Indeed.com, or pay LinkedIn, or pay a mixture of all of them to get the next person in. Then you've got to onboard them. I want to talk about onboarding as well, actually. Then you've got to onboard them. That takes a period of time. And then you've got to, I always say kind of a test. Very often, people don't kind of walk in the door and hit the ground running, Maybe they do at very, very senior levels where they're literally moving from one job doing the exact same thing into another job. But they rarely hit the ground running, and it takes them a period of months. And you've got to pay that salary every month while they get fully up to speed and become actually good at it.
It's so expensive. I mean, we've done a bit of research, and there's, across the board, you really don't get a return on an employee until after 2 years.
Wow.
And
do you factor that into your cost per hire? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you lose someone and you have to replace them, that whole period of paying that big salary out. Overhead going out. That must be factored in some way.
It's a good point. There should be that there should be a way of including that. But typically, like the cost per hire would be, the cost of the time interviewing, the cost of the direct costs of the adverts, agency costs potentially as well. That's typically what goes into that calculation. But you're absolutely right.
Director's time.
That's huge.
Director's time, the most expensive time. Drawing up, the roles and responsibilities, the KPIs. What do I actually want this person to achieve when they get here? And then sort of managing them through the process of actually becoming good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. And I think, and that's why, in recruitment, you often hear, recruiters talk about maybe, job hopping and not looking at people with less than 2 years in certain jobs or with certain employers. And that's the reason for that, really, because, it's really hard to add value to a business if you're there for less than 2 years. But I mean, I think, bringing it back to the branding side of it and how important it is, I just think it kind of, everybody knows, what everybody knows they want to have a strong employer brand. But I spoke to one company after our webinar last week, and the HR manager's feedback was that, we know we want to do this, but we just don't know where to start, just to kind of, again, I suppose, set the scene on that. We did a survey of over 463 HR professionals. I've got it here, Tiffany. I've done my research.
Printed out
and everything. And 56%. What was really holding back the HR teams in employer branding? 56% lack limited internal resources. So they just don't have the people and don't have the time to look at this. So because the business case isn't strong enough, the board or the C-suite, they're not allocating the resources to kind of address the issue, address the challenge around your employer brand. So
it's exactly the same as, so my company's called Generate Leads, and I have this conversation a lot with people, and they go, what do you do? Do you book appointments with people? Do you cold call thousands of people? Do you reach out to people cold on LinkedIn and generate leads? And I'm like, no. They are people who generate shit leads. I generate good leads. I generate the quality leads that you actually want. And, that's the second kind of pillar problem that organizations I'm meeting every day are struggling to solve. I have a client, she came to me, she's the MD of a construction company. She came to me, she said, Tiff, I have no problem getting leads. I have loads of leads. She said, we're doing tenders, constantly doing tenders. I have a resource full time pricing stuff. But she said, most of it I don't want it, and most of it I know I'm not going to get it.
Okay.
And she said, what I want you to help me with is to elevate the quality of these leads.
Sure.
She said, I want to attract more of the jobs that I actually want, the jobs where I can make money, the jobs where I can not just make money, that sounds very Machiavellian, but she said the jobs where I bring value, specific, unique, bespoke value that client needs, and that's how I make a profit.
And where do you start with something like that?
Well, you start by building on the brand. So it's about telling the stories of the people. They're a 52-year-old company. They have people there since the start. Literally since the start. And so we started off by telling the stories of the people to differentiate them from the guys who just rock up and make a delivery.
Sure.
These guys will go out, they will do a site survey, they will bring their expertise. So what they're actually selling is brainware.
Yeah.
I can mention them. It's Irish fencing. So they'll be delighted. But they don't just supply a fence. They just don't drive up and drop off a fence. Right. So the fence is the perimeter that holds the whole thing together. Right. It may require several functions. So it may need to be beautiful. It may need to be highly secure. There are several things. It may need to circumnavigate terrain challenges. Okay, so what they do is they take on these specific challenges and they become like a trusted advisor. And I always say you need to align yourself shoulder to shoulder with the people who are designing this project.
Sure.
And not just rock up and drop off a fence.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what we set out to do. We set out to position them as topical authorities in this area. We set out to position them as having a team of people who have, like, you know, decades of experience under their belts, who really, really know what they're talking about. So they're not just a supplier, they're a trusted advisor. But the point is, yes, they don't always come to me saying they want to generate leads. They sometimes come to me and they say, we want to generate better leads. Yeah. And it's the exact same with hiring.
100%. And it's interesting that you talk about the story. That was the first place you went to, was the story of the people, because really that's what the employer brand is all about, you know, as well. So I mean there's a real crossover and you know, a huge amount of similarities between the two, and I think because that's exactly where you start with your employer brand. You know, you look at your people, you look at the kind of employee generated content, you obviously look at your reviews, you know, kind of on Glassdoor or Indeed or any of the large platforms, because that's really where, you know, like anything else, whether you're, you know, like the way we're booking restaurants or booking hotels, you know, you're going to go to look at what the ratings and the reviews are. I'm terrible for that. I don't go anywhere without checking the reviews.
Clients,
you know,
he's very fond of saying it. He says if you're not in control of your narrative, somebody else is.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
So when you go to the internet, for the evaluation stage of the funnel. Okay, so we talked about the marketing funnel.
We talked about that,
We've got the awareness phase, so if it's a hotel or if it's a construction company, or if it's a recruitment company, you become aware of them through top of the funnel stuff, you know, social media, advertising, an event, a hoarding, a bus stop, whatever it is they're using to generate awareness of their brand. The next place you're going to go to is the internet. So you're going to go looking at their website. You're going to go looking for the stories. What are the stories? What is the lived experience of working in this firm?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
And if you're not telling those stories, then someone else is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and you need to be, at the same time, like, it has to be authentic, right? And I think, like, you asked me at the beginning what's different about Rent a Recruiter, and really it's just, we went on a kind of a process of kind of solving the problem. And the problem, when you look at for companies, it's not just the CV, because you can send the CV, and if the hiring manager doesn't get back to you within, you know, typically 48 hours or 72 hours, that candidate, you know, over the course of those candidates will go. So in other words, like, you need to respond to candidates quickly, otherwise you'll lose talent at the funnel. So you need to maybe, there's hiring manager training involved. So we need to get involved in kind of the workflow of the client. And branding is a piece of that as well, because again, if we're trying to recruit successfully for a company, it's very difficult to do that if they've got 1-2-star reviews on Indeed or Glassdoor. So that's another problem that needs to be fixed. So I think, and then again, you know, we're looking, we want our placements to stay. So there's a testing piece involved. You want to get the right people with the right fit for the organization. So, you know, again, so really what you're getting with our service is kind of that idea of managing the talent acquisition function for the company and taking that headache away.
Strategically managing.
Exactly.
It.
Yeah.
And not just implementing. So you know, ChatGPT told me that you are a thought leader in the recruitment space, and this is exactly the type of stuff that clients want from you, isn't it?
Yeah, don't believe everything ChatGPT says. But yeah. No, I mean, that's certainly what we want to be an authority in this space, right? And that's why, you know, we're big on you know, webinars, speaking engagements. You know, Jamie Groom sits on the board with my business partner sits on the board with the ERF. You know, we're involved with the Dublin Regional Skills Forum and the Dublin Chamber Labour Task Force as well. So we're very much, you know, we like to think that we've got our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the sector, you know, so we can advise our clients, you know, kind of appropriately, you know. But I was just bringing it back to the story. That is something that is really the starting point, isn't it, for any branding?
Well, Positioning, I know these are kind of marketing-y jargon words, positioning and messaging, but it always surprises me how few firms invest time actually doing the work to figure out what are they trying to say and who exactly are they trying to say it to.
Yeah.
So I always do a messaging workshop and an audience workshop. And people, actually, when I first set up this business, I probably didn't charge half enough for these workshops.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realise the huge value that was inherent in them.
Yeah, and who is the audience for those?
So the audience is always the one or two of the senior team.
Okay.
Because really what you have to do is you have to get the visionaries at the table.
Yeah.
You know, you usually have the founder, CEO, MD type people and one or two of the senior team. But it always shocks me how little work any of them have done at actually figuring out what are we trying to say and who are we trying to say it to. But that's only because they're so busy doing the day job.
Yeah, it gets lost.
Yeah. And the challenge for me as a business, right, to generate these inbound leads is to help people to understand that it really is worthwhile doing that work, figuring out what with clarity. Because once you have it figured out with clarity internally, then you can start to spread it, you can amplify it externally. But if you don't agree it internally with your senior leadership team, as you grow, you see, when they're small, it's fine. Because when they're small, all the staff can have regular direct contact with the senior team. So culturally that'll just happen, you know. They will have contact and they will be exposed to the values of the business and this how we do things around here. They'll be exposed to that naturally through these what do they call them in interior design, bumps, like where you bump into people at the tea station or whatever it is. So that happens naturally. Then as they start to grow 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 employees, there'd be employees there who've never met the senior management team. There'd be employers there who've never met the directors. They might meet them, if they're lucky, once a quarter or once a year at the town hall. Yeah. So there's no opportunity for them to kind of by osmosis soak up that mentality that the founders have.
Yeah.
So how do you address that? How do you address that challenge?
Yeah, formally, I think you you set up kind of whether it's one-to-ones on an annual basis, whether it's town hall meetings. I think that's the big challenge as a remote first business that we face. Is making sure that we kind of keep that the communication is the biggest challenge. And keeping the communication going, and luckily we've got a great COO, Mark Loughnane, who is who is brilliant at kind of making sure the team are kept up to date about what's happening, kind of on a day-to-day basis. And I think as well, like things like we've just launched an internal newsletter, like those things, they do make a difference.
Internal communication strategy is probably from a marketing point of view, internal communication strategy, and it is marketing. Yeah. Because your brand evangelists, your greatest
brand champions, brand ambassadors,
are your people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like when I think about it, in my Mac days, the people walking around in the hard hats and the Viz were representing that brand with our logo emblazoned all over them on sites. And on the sites, who were they meeting all day, every day? They were meeting the client, client representative. They were meeting the design teams. They were hugely instrumental in getting the next job. Yeah. From they were meeting the decision makers and they were meeting the influencers of the decision making process on those construction sites. So if they didn't know how they were supposed to represent our brand, if it hadn't been formally communicated to them, and if they weren't fully cognizant of what our message was, they were going to misrepresent us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Everybody needs to be on board. Everyone needs to be, singing from the same hymn sheet. So yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's and one of the concerns that comes through though from HR managers that are trying to implement a kind of an employer brand strategy is how do you get your staff to write positive reviews, without kind of, at the same time, you want it to be authentic from their side as well. You know, so, you know, you don't want it to be something that's overly contrived, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it has to be, I think, there is no silver bullet, and this doesn't happen overnight. You know, and this is something I say all the time, that the older I get, the more I find I say the same things all the time.
Yeah.
But there is no silver bullet. It has to be something that's built up over time. It's like inbound marketing. It's like generating inbound leads. It doesn't happen overnight. So what you have to do is, and doesn't it go back to that internal communication strategy, regular one-on-ones, quarterly one-on-one, opportunities to give feedback, clear KPIs. That's another thing that always shocks me. How many people I meet that don't have a piece of paper with their KPIs on it?
Sure. Yeah.
If you don't have KPIs, I always see that as an opportunity to go and write your own and get them signed off by your directors.
Yeah.
You know, write your own. These are my KPIs as I perceive them.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well,
are these my success indicators?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think probably what's more important about that is that if you don't have KPIs, then you probably don't have a career development plan.
Exactly.
You know, because how can you have a career development plan if you don't know
if you don't have KPIs,
what you're supposed to achieve?
Yeah, and if you don't have KPIs, then you don't necessarily have incentive or motivation. Because, like, if you are going to get a bonus, I mean, you know, a lot of times in our industry, the bonus is like Christmas, just kind of, you know, make it up on the spot.
Yeah.
Whereas really the bonus should be metrics driven, KPIs driven, and it should be based on hitting certain benchmarks.
Yeah.
And when you hit those benchmarks, what a great feeling.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And then you're like, I have something written down in black and white that conveys in a very robust way that I'm a success. Because a lot of people in their jobs are kind of wandering around. I know, I used to be like this before I kind of took control of it myself. Just kind of wandering around going, I don't know if I'm any good at this. I don't know if I'm being successful or not. I don't know if they think I'm any good. And when you have that in your head, you're not going to ask for a raise. You're not going to ask for a bonus. You're not going to ask for a promotion. What you're going to do is you're going to go on the internet and see, can you find a job that'll pay you $5,000 more or 10 grand more.
100%. Yeah. You'll be quiet quitting, they might call it today.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm successful, so I don't know if I should boldly and strongly do more of what I'm already doing, or whether I should just kind of like recede into the background and keep ticking over.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I mean, absolutely. I mean, people need feedback, right? And people need to know that they're doing a good job. And I think the other key thing around a strong brand is that you know, people really need to know, and a strong culture in that their job is purposeful, and it's that they're having an impact on the overall mission of the company. And, you know, coming back to the communication piece, people need to know what that mission is, and, you know, kind of what your values are. And then as leaders, are you demonstrating those values as well? And we see it in our day-to-day, you know, we see it in our own team as well. And also we see it when people leave jobs. Obviously in recruitment, we're dealing a lot of the time when people are leaving jobs, right? And you see that, you know, you see it when people lose that connection with the overall mission of the company. So like, we're on a mission to change the way recruitment is perceived and delivered. And we're a disruptor in the space. And we're obsessed with keeping our customers happy. You know, because if we keep our customers happy, then they'll stay with us and they'll refer other customers to us. And we know that, you know, 60% of our best customers and those top 10 clients we spoke about earlier come from referred business. You know, so that is really they stay as well, don't they? Yeah. So that's so important for us. And I think, you know, people, you know, another big thing for us is, you know, people want to be trusted. And then again, the idea of psychological safety, I like that one, where people feel they can be themselves, you know, and that's where you get good ideas and all that, you know. So, but yeah, no, I mean, we'll put it in the notes of the podcast, but like the cost for the employer brand, I think it reduces the cost by 43%, cost per hire, if you've got a strong brand. And the other one I like is that 75% of candidates will consider an employer brand before applying for a job.
I always remember, like, because I remember people used to come in for interviews and they'd be sitting in reception, and I would kind of, you know, sometimes go out and talk to them before they went into their interview. And I'd be like, so where did you come from? Or what company did you come from? And I'd ask them questions. And they'd be like, oh yeah, like I had 3 or 4 agencies contacting me from 3 or 4 different companies. But I really liked the look of this one. And I'm like, why? Why did you like it? Oh, well, I went on your website and I went on your Facebook or your Instagram or whatever it was, LinkedIn, and it looked like good crack.
Yeah.
I remember them actually using those words. Yeah. It looked like good crack.
That's great. Yeah.
And that I was like, yes.
Yeah.
You know,
there's the fluffy stuff. The fluffy stuff is working. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I always remember when they got hired, you know, saying it to them afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, like you were attracted to this because of what we do.
Yeah,
because of what we do online.
Of what they saw.
That's us taking control of the narrative.
And they like the look and feel of the company. Yeah.
And that was an emotional, like the salary and all those other things can be negotiated.
Yeah.
But that stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff happens.
Well, it makes you stand out, right?
Yeah.
It makes you stand out, and you've got to stand out. And you know, we talk about the war for talent, and it's still ongoing in construction for sure. So you've got to stand out. You know, people need a reason to join you. And I was delighted. I had a similar experience because we're interviewing at the moment, and I asked one of the interviewees, you know, why did you choose us? And she said she looked, you know, she really liked the content, really liked the values of the company, and that was coming through our, you know, website and our social media. So yeah, no, it's very gratifying to hear it actually working. It does, yeah, because it is very hard to know metrics. The return on marketing and branding and things like that. But those stories, you know, make it feel like it's actually paying off, and that's your ROI, I think.
Yeah, because digital marketers will always try and baffle leadership teams with science when it comes to ROI. So they will have like cost per meal and cost per click and number of impressions and all this kind of stuff, and stats on engagement and graphs and, you know, dashboards and all this kind of stuff. And like, you know, I had this conversation with someone last night. We were at the property summit, and he said to me, you know, the guys that were doing our website, they said it was really important to do this for SEO. And I said, why does SEO matter? Are you selling lipsticks? Yeah. Are you selling chocolate bars? Yeah. I said, there's probably 200 people that can give you a job. Yeah. There's probably 200 people. Yeah. Like you literally need to get your sniper gun out and just, you can pick them off one by one, you know, with marketing. Yeah. Account-based marketing. You know, very strategic, very, very targeted
what
marketing.
What customers do you want to work for and target those customers?
Your audience is finite. Yeah. It is clearly defined. And it's easy to reach because we fully understand, we're good at what we do. We fully understand what their challenges are, and we fully understand that we have a solution to help them solve their challenges. And that's the only communication we need to do. We don't necessarily need Google to rank high in Google search. Yeah. But there's this obsession with virality. Yeah. And I said, look, you know, virality can be important, but in a much smaller way. So like you can be on LinkedIn, and most of your target, 99% of your target audience are probably there on LinkedIn. Sure. And there are probably a lot of them connected in some shape or form to each other. So if you start reaching them, there will be a virality that will start to happen organically, you know, on social media. So that kind of virality, yes.
With content.
That resonates, that educates, that excites them, that inspires them, and maybe causes them to think something that's a little bit controversial.
But do you think that like the blog is dead? Because
I love this.
ChatGPT is now better at writing blogs than any of us will ever be. So, you know, I don't need to put 60 blogs now on my website because that's not really going to bring people, you know, it's not going to really get people's attention anymore. Yeah. And then the next part of that question would be, well, what's next?
So you've got two things. I always talk about reach and relevance, right? Yeah. So like, yes, ChatGPT can write a blog. You know as well as I do that ChatGPT is nothing without a good prompt engineer. Yeah. So like, for example, if I start writing a blog about a construction company that's working in a live environment, right? I'll just default to that because I did so much of this. And I still do. Live environment, critical services, have to keep everything live, right? That is the only thing that developer or investor in that real estate actually cares about. The only thing he cares about is keeping his hospital or his pharmaceutical company or his logistics hub or his tenants that are working in the offices live and working, right? So if I'm going to write a blog, I'm going to write a blog about how I, as a contractor or as a professional services firm or whatever it is, whoever I'm working for, how I achieve that. ChatGPT can't write that unless I specifically give him really good prompts, him, her, they, really good prompts about communication, coordination of trades, segregation.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that planning.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that only a construction person would know about.
Yeah, so it comes down to the prompt engineering.
ChatGPT won't know that stuff until I tell him.
Yeah.
So if I say to him, hey, right, I want to write a blog about operating in a live environment where there's a hospital and I have to keep the critical services live, he will come up with some generic, fluffy crap that won't mean anything to anyone. But if I say to him, I want to talk about approach and methodology specifically around planning, coordination of trades, segregation, communication, you know, managing plant and pedestrians, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and then maybe you could actually include your own experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then he will give me a page, right? And, you know, Natasha Bedingfield always talks about the blank page. And I always feel like if he will remove the tyranny of the blank page. He will give you something.
It gives you a start.
He will give you a start. I still write a blog, right? I don't write them enough. I need to write more of them. I still firmly believe in the blog because the blog can then be turned into TikToks. The blog can be turned into reels. You can actually, you see people and they've got the phone in front of them and they read their blog out and they make a TikTok out of it. So I still think if the blog is relevant to the people whose problems that you are solving, then it will still educate them and it'll cause them to think.
Sure.
Generic fluffy blogs, 100% agree with you. Get rid of that.
Yeah. And what would be the kind of the case study or the brand, you know, or the biggest impact you've had, you know, from a branding perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of them, but, you know, we have a client who set up their business in April 2020, just before COVID came in May.
Yes.
I set my business up in May 2020.
Oh my God.
I was made redundant in May, June, whatever it was.
Yeah,
May
because that was the
2020.
shutdown. Yeah.
Yeah, I set up the business in May 2020 and he had set his up in April. And it's a fit out company. They specifically work on kind of retrofits, green retrofits of existing real estate, right?
And what was the biggest impact that you did for that brand?
Well, we built a brand for them by building a website, creating a narrative. We showcased all their case studies. As the jobs were completed, we would showcase them. We would show, because they were starting out in business. So they were taking the very, very challenging projects that other fit out companies didn't really want.
Yeah.
When you think about it, you know, but that has now become their niche and their speciality. That's the job.
Yeah.
That is actually the job they want now.
Yeah.
The one that has a specific challenge to it.
Brilliant.
That they will overcome with innovation.
Yeah.
So we built a story around that using video, using photography, using case studies, using testimonials.
Yeah.
We put it out on LinkedIn. We put it on their website. We created a brand for them. Now, when they're MD, because as you know, when you're an MD, you spend most of your day doing sales.
Yes, it's basically a glorified salesperson. Yeah.
When he picks up the phone, they've heard of him.
Yeah.
They know what he's at because
yeah.
he has a brand and he has awareness and he has a bit of robustness behind him because the showcase
so you're
is
making
there.
that intro, you're making that intro a bit easier.
So much easier.
That initial call.
The definition of generating a lead can be fluid. A lead doesn't necessarily mean you're on the tender list. A lead doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's looking for a quote. A lead can be an audience member who's listening more intently.
Somebody who's shown some kind of an interest in your service, I think, right?
Somebody who's got, sometimes they go round the funnel a few times, don't they? They go awareness, evaluation, and then they forget about you. And then they go awareness, evaluation, and then they forget about you. And then they go awareness, evaluation, and maybe the third time they've seen something. So they might have seen a blog or seen a video or attended an event or seen your logo on a van or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And maybe the third or fourth or fifth time that your brand has kind of touched them, that might be the time when they'll sign up, get in touch, pick up the phone, whatever it is, download your thing.
Yeah.
Join your webinar.
Yeah. 8 to 12 contacts I think is what you need to close a sale. That's
so they're
just
all leads. I see them all as leads.
Yeah.
I see audience members that have the gift of work.
Yeah.
That are listening intently to you. I see them all as leads. I see them as a warm pool of leads.
Yeah.
Ready for you to convert.
Yeah. And so where does video content kind of rank for you, and how important is it to you? And how do you measure its effectiveness, like compared to a blog or something like that?
Good question. Video, we do a quarterly report for all our clients, and we're constantly encouraging is the word I was going to say, encouraging our clients to invest in video, because always video performs the best.
Metric in terms of views.
In terms of views, in terms of clicks, in terms of comments, in terms of engagement.
Engagement, yeah.
But like, it has to be something that is a bit controversial. It has to be something that's challenging what people already think.
Yeah.
You know, they love that. That will cause comments. And comments are what the algorithm loves.
Yeah.
So video performs best. Video and carousel posts, weirdly, perform best.
Very good.
Now, obviously, reach and relevance, right? So I tell my clients, don't get too hung up on reach. You know, please get hung up on relevance. Don't get hung up on reach. The other thing, the second part of my answer to that question, Barry, is when you're making a website, right? And this is my new thing. This is my new rant, okay? I say to clients, don't fork out thousands on a design in our industry now. Construction, architecture, maybe not architecture, construction, engineering, in our industry, right? Maybe property. Don't fork out thousands on a bespoke design for a website. Buy yourself a template for a few $100s and spend the money on the videos, spend the money on the photos, spend the money on the case studies, spend the money on somebody who can actually write really good English.
Yeah.
Invest in that, because there are literally thousands of templates out there that will do exactly what you want to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you don't have to pay somebody to reinvent the wheel. This is my new discovery, and I've started offering it to my clients. I do build websites, but I prefer to give you a template and build really good content to put into the template.
Because that's what makes a difference.
That's what makes you different.
Yeah. And,
you know?
Yeah, and that's how to stand out, right?
And it's video first.
Yeah.
It has to be video first.
And so in terms of, so you talked about being controversial, but at the same time being authentic, right? It always has to come back to that. So in terms of having a view, having an opinion, that kind of thing.
And that's why I'm always going on about stuff like me saying buy a template flies in the face of anything any marketing agency has ever said.
Yeah.
But I'm in the construction and engineering field.
Yeah, because they want you to spend 10 grand on the website. Right?
We're not selling. We're selling stories. We're selling authenticity. Yes, we're selling all that good stuff. We're selling knowledge, expertise, education, qualifications.
Yeah.
We're selling testimonials. We're selling. I always say, I'm like a child in a sweet shop. When I hear the stories of my construction companies, whether they're an electrical contractor, whether they're an architect, or whether they're an interior designer, or whether they're an M&E consultant engineer.
Sure.
I go in and other people's eyes glaze over. I get really excited. I want to hear about how they made air flow freely in this windowless building and that it always feels fresh. I want to hear those stories.
Yeah.
And I want to hear how the human in the building feels when he's sitting there with that lovely air circulating around.
Yeah.
So...
Because it's very relevant to your audience, right?
Yeah, it is. And those are the stories that I want to tell. So I get really excited about telling those. You know what? It's interesting because when I put them in front of a camera and I ask them questions about what they do all day, and how good they are, and to tell me about how good they are at it, it also gives them that sense of purpose, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a recognition of what they do all day. It's a recognition of their successes. A tangible recognition that we're going to put on the internet and tell the world about it.
Absolutely. And recognition is actually something that we haven't mentioned yet, which is really important for your brand. And then I think capturing that recognition as well, capturing those moments of recognition. you know, whether it's an award for, you know, best performer or an award for some achievement.
You're an award-winning professional
We're an
services
award-winning
firm.
agency, yeah. So and that, you know, we use those nights out to capture those moments, you know, kind of when you get a trophy, and, you know, kind of it could be for anything. We won it for Agency of the Year, and actually best recruitment company to work for as well. But it was
amazing.
just, we were delighted with it. I'm really happy because
People love awards, don't they?
they love awards, absolutely. I mean, it's great recognition, and it's, I mean, you know,
I'm great at winning them for my clients.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at entering them for myself. I would never do it.
But we have an amazing team of recruiters, and it's
Yeah.
great for them to get that recognition.
Yes.
You know, for the work that they're doing for the clients. So I think
So award-winning,
awards,
testimonials, reviews, case studies,
reviews online, and
yeah.
And ideally, I mean, video content to capture those moments is ideal, right? But how would you go about that? I mean, obviously, you know, if a company doesn't necessarily have the kit here, you know, to kind of capture that, is there any other suggestions that you'd have to kind of capture that video content?
Like if they want to do it themselves in-house?
Yeah, or even, you know, how would...
But they can hire me to do it.
They can hire you to do it, exactly. Yeah.
Like I like to say, right, and, you know, Eli might disagree with me on this, but we're not a video production house, okay? We don't just hire out a guy with a load of cameras and sound gear and lighting gear. At the moment, we don't do that. At the moment, we sell marketing.
Yeah.
We sell you a fully resolved piece of marketing.
Yeah.
So you come to us with a challenge, and we will provide you with a marketing solution to that challenge. And the marketing solution will be strategic. It'll be all about what are we trying to say, who are we trying to say it to, how are we going to get that message to them. So I sell marketing, right? However, if somebody did want a video done and they wanted to do it in-house themselves, they could hire us as a team for a bit of guidance, a bit of strategy, a bit of copywriting, and they could hire Eli with all his cameras and his gear and his stuff. So they can hire that.
Yeah.
They can hire it, but I would prefer if it was one tactic that they could implement as part of a wider strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just the video on its own, right?
Because how many people, and this happens all the time, Barry, how many times do you go into YouTube, somebody will put up a post going, here's our video, watch it, 5 likes. You go to YouTube, 5 likes, gathering dust, tumbleweeds. You know, we spent 15 grand on this video. We put it on YouTube, and then we went, no.
Done.
We made a video. We put a corporate talking head in front of a camera with a script, with a teleprompter. We stuck it on YouTube. And then we turned around to the marketing team and we said, that didn't work. We spent 20 grand on that. Didn't work, got nothing out of it.
No, exactly. It needs to be part of an overall strategy, right?
You mightn't want to invest in a big salary for an expensive marketing director or an expensive business development director. But you can certainly afford to put the resources aside on a month-to-month basis to hire somebody who can help you out with that part-time.
Yeah.
And that, if I was going to put a call to action at the bottom of this video, that's probably what I'd say.
So look, thanks so much, Tiffany. Pleasure chatting to you today. Really enjoyed it. And thanks, Eli, for the very professional setup. I'd ask anyone who's interested in finding out more about our resources and our services. We've got tons of free resources available, you know, whether it's our AI salary bot, rate your recruitment process, employer branding health check, all available on rentarecruiter.com. So we have it all in one place. So please check it out, and feel free to obviously message me if you have any questions about what we've covered today.
Excellent driving traffic through the funnel.
That's
Well done, Barry.
it.